Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's digital panel. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This discussion is being recorded and will be sent to your email in the days following the event. If you have any questions at any time during the event, you can submit them through the Q&A tool below. I'll be fielding these questions throughout the panel. We'll try to answer as many as we can in the end. Lastly, you can find answers to some common technical issues located in the Help Engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ and host of Trade Talks, NASDAQ's #1 social and digital show covering everything that touches the global capital markets. And I will also be your moderator for today's session. And we're lucky enough to have Ravi, David, and Sanjeev joining us today for this exciting conversation around digital transformation. So before we get started, let's introduce them. First, I'll start with Ravi Mayaram, Chief Technology Officer at Couchbase. Ravi, can you share a brief introduction? Welcome.
Thank you, Jill. Glad to be here. Ravi Mayaram, the CTO at Couchbase. Have had a long career in building systems related to data, all the way from operating systems to application servers, databases, distributed systems, mobile information systems, and a few other deep technology. It's been a very rewarding effort here at Couchbase, bringing it all the way from a simple, what we call as a key value store to a full-fledged data platform. So that's my journey here at Couchbase and generally my career.
All right, thank you, Ravi. We also have David Wilson, Vice President of Operations and Head of Infosys Partner Ecosystem. David, welcome to the webinar. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Jill. Again, my name is David Wilson. I lead the global partner ecosystem for Infosys. I've spent my career working in the partnership space. I started with a small ISV many years ago, building out channels. About 4 years ago, I joined Infosys, having led the software partner channel and cloud channel for IBM. Again, I'm now with Infosys. And as we're seeing around the digital transformation space, we're aggressively building out our partnership, and one of the key ones is with Couchbase.
And lastly, we have Sanjeev Mohan, Principal Analyst at SanjMo. Welcome, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Jill. It's such an honor to be part of this panel of esteemed practitioners and friends. I am a data and analytics professional. I ran the agenda at Gartner. I was there for almost 5 years. While I was at Gartner, I got an opportunity to work closely with Ravi and rest of his team. Now I work with a much wider remit of customers and people. And my focus has been as an independent analyst into what are some of the modern technologies that are being used for digital transformation, how these technologies are evolving, who are the users and the use cases of these technologies. We're living in one of the most exciting times in our data and analytics journey. So very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, we certainly are. And digital transformation isn't a new concept. And in recent years, COVID-19 has only accelerated these efforts, propelling us forward into a new era of digital transformation. And this time, it's not optional. Failure to transform can prove to be both costly and detrimental to an organization. In this hour-long discussion, we explore the trends defining this new era of digital transformation, as well as lessons learned from the digital transformation over the last 5 years. We'll take a look ahead at what to expect in 2022 and beyond, so let's jump right into it. Let's first talk about how companies are achieving modernization results in the industry. How are companies approaching it? What drives companies to make the leap and transform? Ravi, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. I mean, to begin with, this digital transformation is a journey that we have all been in for at least past 50, 60 years, ever since William Shockley invented the transistor. So to say that this is something new is sort of a little counterproductive, but this is a tipping point that we are in the middle of, and many enterprises understand, recognize that, and they are taking drastic actions. And one of the reasons for the tipping point has been sort of the world events that have changed, where people are sort of working more remotely and people are accessing everything digital first and then physical second. That's the tipping point that we have arrived at. And many enterprises are tackling this successfully, and many are not sort of taking sort of the approach, the proactive approach. It sort of in many enterprises starts off as a sort of an initiative, which is just, technology shift as opposed to a business or a cultural shift that we are sort of in the middle of. So there is success where the enterprises see this as a digital divide that is sort of forming now and how they want to be on the right side of it. Whereas there are enterprises which are treating this as, well, yet another technology update sort of a mindset, and those are having difficulties. I mean, we saw results of some of the stuff in these surveys where there are both success stories as well as projects that are sort of failing. It's a question of how these initiatives are treated, what sort of business outcomes they drive, and what sort of participation across the company this is sort of led with, and that determines the sort of results. We are in the middle of a huge generational transformation, and some enterprises recognize that shift and they're taking action. And that's the best approximation we can give to how this journey is sort of transformed now.
David, as a partner ecosystem leader of 300,000 person global system integrator, can you give us an idea of what Infosys has witnessed related to changes in clients' approach to digital transformation?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think, a key point in everybody's business life and probably personal life was back in March of 2020. What we witnessed was a remarkable shift in the thinking of our client set and our teams. If you go back to that period of time, we were going through scenarios where our clients were meeting with us saying, listen, we know that there's this disruption in the world, but in order to continue to work on our projects, you need to physically be in our location. So, we need to progress in this way. We'll take the necessary steps to make everything safe. And then literally a week later, that shifted from, okay, well, you cannot work with us on site because our offices have closed. So we need to make sure that we're continuing to work and support these global enterprises in a remote manner, but you need to be somewhat local. And then the following week, literally over the course of 3 successive weeks, it went from, our offices are closed, you don't need to be local, you just need to be complying to our security requirements, meet your service level agreements and such. And suddenly, literally overnight, what had been this digital path that we were on accelerated, many over. And, I think we could all state that, there's no going back. I think there's an interest in from a face-to-face model that people want to have that level of interaction. But the pace at which digital transformation has now accelerated is probably, I think we were on this path, but we've essentially added within a 3 or 4 month period of time, we probably added 3 or 4 years worth of digital transformation progress. So right now, when you look at how we are looking and our clients are approaching this, it's in a accelerated manner than before. I think the remote nature of work, the innovation element, and now, when you look at the dynamics related to the world economy and some of the disruption in the world, I think people are focused even more around the cost controls and such. And at the heart of this is innovation and that digital transformation.
Yeah, certainly a cultural shift, that's for sure. And to piggyback off of that, what role are C-suite executives playing in digital transformation? How are they becoming active participants in formulating their organization's digital transformation strategies? And why is it critical that they're involved in these conversations? Ravi, I'd like to start off with you.
Yes, so like I was saying earlier, many of these initiatives are a success only when the full sort of the appropriate people in this at the C-suite level are engaged in this, because it's got to be driven by business outcomes. It's got to be driven by outcomes of the consumers as opposed to sort of otherwise they start off as IT modernization efforts, because the goals are different out there. As in, if you just leave it as an IT driven effort, it would be to optimize how IT operates, not so much about how consumers how their digital experience is changing. The whole world has sort of changed, to how we sort of meet our doctors, to how we sort of go collect our groceries. Everything is changing. That requires systemic change. All those that were set up for more physical interaction now have to be rethought and sort of relaid out so that it is sort of a digital experience first for people. Even if they have to engage with you physically, the first set of experiences, more and more we are, virtually assisted before we do real things in physical world. And those experiences matter a lot, and your competition is just one click away, so to say, right? And so if your experiences are more painful digitally, they won't come to you for further engagement. Yeah, and that is a business level initiative. It is not just a technology shift. So when you get the right level of C-suite engagement, the goals are appropriately set, and it becomes an organizational behavior as opposed to a technology shift. It's not a technology for technology's sake. It is to drive outcomes for the organizations driven by the behavior of their consumers. So that's where the sort of the transition, those enterprises that get this are doing fabulously well. Others are beginning to understand that there is a digital chasm here, and you have to be on the right side of the chasm. You'll get left behind.
And going back to how industries are approaching modernization, Ravi, how permanent do enterprises believe the digital transformation projects performed during the pandemic years were?
Right. Actually, many of the enterprises who actually took these things seriously would tell you that 90% of the projects sort of achieved more than what they expected when they set out to do these digital transformation projects. It's just that not enough of them started with the right sort of mindset. That's, if you see that there's a lot of failures too. But those that actually had the right level of engagement, they would say 90% of the project exceeded what they set out to do. Actually, because of the change in the way people were working, people had a lot more apprehension as to how this will go. And in fact, what these teams delivered were more than their expectations. So these are permanent changes. Many of the changes that we are sort of seeing here, they are here to stay. And that is what is heartening in many of these transformations, to see that people are doing it from first principles for the right reasons. And these are where both the way things are consumed, the way it is changed, and the way technology is adapting to it is being done for the right reason. And so these are long-term changes. I mean, just as an example, remote working. We've always had remote working in many of the facets of the industries. Not all industries allow you to be sort of remote working capable. But many of the industries, even though they had remote work, it was never, so to say, a first-class citizen. Those people who sat in a physical room, they got to control the conversation at a certain level. Now that has completely changed, because everybody became a remote employee, so to say. Everybody, from the CEO downwards. So, working in a remote environment is no longer something that is sort of an organizational or cultural behavior. It is the necessity of the business. So all the process, all the tooling, all the infrastructure that had to be sort of set so that you can make that happen is a reality, and it is here to stay. And it is having societal changes in terms of remote work, compensation, finding talent. Everything is sort of changing, and these are deep systemic or societal changes that that's what we go from era to era. This is the sort of next evolution of the digital era.
Right. And David, if you could comment on the permanent nature of the digital transformation that we're seeing.
Sure. I want to jump on one of the comments that Ravi made on that point related to business outcomes. If you look at the traditional way that clients or businesses used to engage technology companies, they essentially, define a project. They look at all the various components of it, the business application, maybe the middleware elements of it, what infrastructure it was going to run on. And then they do, after making those individual purchases, they'd essentially then do an RFP, maybe an SI, to bring this all together to deliver it. This idea of being this central cog in a procurement machine, and then have everything meet at the client. Our businesses today, most notably the C-suite executives, they just don't want to be in that game anymore. That concept of business outcome is not just a statement; it's a reality. It's a contract now in the way in which customers want to engage or clients want to engage with us. They want to contract for a business outcome. And that's really changed, how this operates. Obviously, in a non-digital world, you've got different piece parts that are much more complex, but the digital nature of our solutions now allow us to bring these things together a lot easier. One example that I would use is we had a client a little while ago came to us and basically listed off every piece of technology that they acquire, that they own, have contracts with. 104. This is a mid-level bank, not a massive bank. 104 products, purchased through 38 different partners. Some was direct, some was through distributors and such. And they're shifting to an outcome-based model. So, we may have gotten here a lot faster, and we may have seen these trends, heading in that direction, as Ravi was mentioning. But it's not just the conversation; it's how businesses want to contract and how they want to transform. It's in this outcome-based model.
Right, and to build off of that, Ravi, David, just to hammer the point home, did those projects performed during the pandemic reflect new, sustained ways of working and operating, or do you think there will be an eventual shift to normal? Ravi, let's start with you, and David, I'll have you follow up.
It's a good question. Human behavior doesn't change that quickly, and there are going to be places where we will sort of regress to the norm. But there'll be less of that, because the fundamental shift is sort of already, it's a societal sort of a shift. How we choose to live now, how we choose to play, work, everything is sort of changing. On the one extreme, we can talk about metaverse and stuff like that, but it is a lot of us talk about digital twin, which is that from the day a baby is born, or even before that, it starts leaving a digital footprint. There's already a Facebook page, a Twitter handle, or whatever else, that little one, the parents set it up. So from that day onwards, you're leaving a digital footprint. And that is here to stay. And companies are sort of adopting to that from the standpoint of all their consumers, their behavior. Direct to consumer is a movement, and that's here to stay. Right? Every industry is going through that. Where are it's basically about disintermediating the intermediary in one sense. Where is that travel agent? It's just you and your two little thumb. And where is that bank teller? Anybody who's got agent in their title is sort of getting intermediated at a certain level. So it's directly coming to you, direct streaming or any walk of life. You're actually able to see that thing. So these are many of the changes here are permanent, and in the way we will do business, and the way the economy is going to operate, and it's actually going to get to the next level at a certain in more commercial interactions, if you will, with more modern technologies sort of showing up, like in the currencies and other stuff will also become more and more digital, and it'll become more ubiquitous. You don't have to give your mother's maiden name and social security number for every transaction you're going to have on the net, so to say. There'll be more ways of sort of exchanging trust. And when those innovations come in, it's going to be even more. This is an irrevocable process. You just have to keep moving forward in this. If you're tangled up, you tangle on. There is no way to sort of regress back to the mean. But we will make some more mistakes before we sort of make the right sort of progress. But the progress has been accelerated in the last couple of years. That's, even though people have been talking about this for a while, it has never become like an initiative, like a major imperative for businesses. It was also a thing. Nowadays, the CIOs and the boards are even more involved in seeing these transitions happen. And so these are here to stay, and these are here to accelerate and take us to a, let's say, even more brave new world.
Yeah, if you think about, let's say Columbus discovering America, in advance of that, the maps basically showed the world ending and ships falling off the edge and such to a certain degree, in the same way that once that was broken, there was no turning back from an exploration perspective. The same could be said or related to digital transformations. Over the course of the last number of years, we've recognized that what had previously been restrictions from a business perspective, nervousness, concern over taking these digital transformations too far, that we were all pushed over the edge. And now that we've gotten over there, we realize that this is a new world and there is no going back. So the way in which projects are defined, the way in which our business leaders are actively involved, because these are, they're not supplemental type projects. A lot of them are your business type functions, given the rapid nature of innovation. I don't think there's anything going back. And I think that what you're seeing now is a restructuring and a realignment in the industry to take advantage of these new opportunities.
All right. And so before we switch gears a little bit and talk about the future of digital transformation, I want to ask each of you the same question. What was one of the learnings or silver linings of the pandemic? Sanjeev, why don't you take this first, and then Ravi and David, I'll have you follow up.
Thank you, Jill. So I totally agree that digital transformation is here to stay, and it's permanent. Some of the things that Ravi and Dave mentioned are definitely the case. Now, I do have to say that the silver lining is that we are a lot more into execution mode now than we have ever been before. I remember, we used to get together and have these meetings and do blue sky strategy sessions and then get into analysis paralysis. There is no time for that. The time is for execution. But have we been successful in digital transformation? I don't know. And I'll give you a personal example that attests to what Dave said earlier, that companies are having 104 different products. So in my last few months at Gartner, I would get client inquiries, and the client would say, I want to do this streaming, some option, how do I do it? And I would say, oh, wow, okay, let's talk about it. Here is your option. Use Confluent, Kafka, whatever technology I shared with them. They're like, yeah, I've already done that, but it's not really, delivering the results. Like, okay, no problem. How about the second option? Done that, been there. Third option, been there. And after that, to be honest, I am running out of options, and the client has now every tool under the sun. And they've tried that. And I really think it goes back to what Ravi had said earlier. When Couchbase did this survey, they found that 64% of the C-suite executives are not involved in defining the business strategy. And I think there's a disconnect. We are finding that yes, people are executing, yes, they're delivering results, but they are still not at a point where they are able to meet the client needs. Another interesting example, I spend a lot of time in data governance, data security space, and I find that developers are looking for data, and they are happily writing programs. They're doing whatever they want. Is the data privacy, data compliance being adhered to? They're not really that concerned. They have left it up to the senior management, and it's a CISO, the CIO, the CTO's responsibility. So yes, we are very execution focused. We are delivering results, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done.
Great, thank you, Sanjeev. And Ravi?
Yeah, I think to me, the silver lining is that many of the companies, many of the technologies in these companies, they've been sitting on the sidelines for many of these initiatives, which they knew they had to take, but was never sort of the priority at a certain level. So what I'm really most heartened to see is the fact that people are adopting more modern technology to make this transformation happen, because that actually, when you adopt newer technology, it requires more commitment and sort of focus and effort, which people were sort of not willing to jump into earlier. Now they know it's a necessity. It's otherwise they are at the pedal of losing their leadership or their position in the business. So it's about adopting more modern technology to move the agenda forward, as opposed to, like Sanjeev said, analysis paralysis, or finding ways to sort of delay things, because there was never that paramount for the business. So that's where I find to me the excitement is that people are moving forward.
And from from my perspective, given my my role in the world with building up partner ecosystems, this has been an exciting period for that element of it. And it's beyond traditional tech companies. A lot of these clients that we're working with these days that have gone through these digital transformations are wanting to now take their business to the next level. And more so, we are seeing opportunities where our clients are also becoming partners of ours. And the way in which we define a business relationship has changed significantly. And I think the digital means allow us to do this. So when you talk to a telco, a bank, you go through these different areas. Some of these other ISVs we deal with. We're seeing now, the digital means allowing these companies to come together and go to market with a much more meaningful partnership and a much more meaningful offer to our clients. And again, this is accelerated over the course of the last 2 or 3 years beyond what I think we would have originally thought.
There is a palpable sense of urgency, which we didn't have earlier. So that's what we are seeing.
And let's, Sanjeev, stay with me here. Let's talk about the future of digital transformation. What does flexible cloud architecture mean for the future? Sanjeev, again, we'll start with you, and Ravi and David, please feel free to jump in at any point.
So flexible cloud architecture is a great concept. The whole idea is that we can now use best of breed. We don't rely on a monolithic single vendor, single piece of software to deliver our results. So we are seeing that we first had this segregation of compute and store. Now I'm starting to see that the metrics layer is another segregation. The way we are defining policies is another segregation. So the future is where we are seeing this unbundling of technologies, and with unbundling, I can get best of breed. I'm not relying on whatever I get from a customer. However, this is a good thing that we are seeing a lot of innovation and enhancements in different aspects of our cloud stack, our data and analytics stack. But it's also putting a lot of onus on the users to start integrating. First of all, understand what are my different choices. In every category, I'm finding out there are like 15, 20, 30 different companies. So how do I analyze? How do I figure out what are the right technologies? How do I bring it together? There are 3 major challenges that this future architecture is bringing to the forefront. And these 3 challenges are security, lack of expertise, and rising cost, cloud cost spend. So these are 3 things that we didn't really have to deal with as much, but now we are finding out that we need to make sure our data is secure, governed, data residency, all of those are met. We have the right skill sets in place, and we're getting smarter about how we deploy the workloads so we can keep our cost in check.
Right, and Ravi?
Yes, so I think you asked about the flexible cloud architecture. That is currently pipe dream. The way the cloud has to evolve is it's like electricity. You just plug and play. You don't need to know whether the electricity is coming from, what is the source of it? Is it nuclear? Is it fossil fuel? Is it wind? How is it being produced? Is a thing for the grid to figure out and supply you the electricity with the sort of right price. Because when I plug, I just want my appliance to work, light to come on. So cloud computing has to get to that level too, so that only then you get this cloud flexible architecture, which means that I may want to sort of use one cloud provider for one purpose, another one for another. It could be geo, it could be governance, it could be so many cost, it could be so many factors. So clouds get to that requires standardization, that requires interoperability, that requires sort of seamless way of moving data at the end of the day. So when it evolves to that, then the cloud flexible architectures, and it puts, like Sanjeev said, more onus on the consumers of it also, because they need to have the right sort of abstraction, if you will, to sort of span these clouds. So that initiative, that effort is in the nascent stages of people thinking about this, because that's a reality that we are going to sort of, once now they've assumed cloud is a given, then next is sort of this flexible architecture so that you can take advantage of any of these clouds that sort of benefits your organization. And so the cost is a huge factor in this beyond interoperability. So I think that will also get standardized at a certain level once it becomes more, how do you say, commoditized. So more people start using this. So that's how I see the flexibility of the cloud architecture sort of evolving, where cloud is not sort of, it's a little bit more proprietary now. It has got to become more generic and standardized, so people can span clouds and consume it based on their needs.
You throw on top of all this the competition for actual resources, as it being development resources, business resources right now. Infosys ourselves, last quarter, I believe we hired 50,000 team members. It's just incredible, the growth, both the growth and demand for skills, but also the competition for skills. It may seem like a separate discussion, but when you factor in how our technologies, our platforms, having that flexible architecture that Ravi was referencing, and that this is now a standard model as opposed to a specialty model, it also flows over to how we staff and how we build our teams and such. So this is another factor that's really driving that integrated, consistent platform that we move forward with.
If I may add something, Joe. So to Ravi and David's points, as an end user, I don't want to be in the business of trying to understand and parse different technologies, unless I'm like Netflix or Uber or Facebook, Meta. I have a large IT teams, and we develop software and we open source it and all of that. So the future is for a business end user is a SaaS approach. So it's an API. Now behind the scenes, Couchbase, for example, may have a very sophisticated stack with database resources going up and down elastically in Docker containers, orchestrated by Kubernetes, and multi-tenant architecture, whatever it may be. I, as an end user, I don't even know which cloud it's hosted in, because all I care about is that I execute an API call, my data gets loaded, and I have these wonderful analytical tools that allow me to analyze that data in whatever form I want, and then the whole technology is abstracted from the end user. So Ravi, I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree with you. The thing is, there are two things that are happening in the because it's a transformation, and whenever these things happen, first the pendulum swings one way before it has to come back to a more realistic one. So in this process, there are a couple of things that have happened, which is, one is the sprawl. Like you mentioned earlier, there are 7 tools for solving the same problem, and there's an 8th one being built in the name of cloud. I was talking to one enterprise where the gentleman, my context is always databases. He pulled up a document where he showed more than 100 different deployments of databases. Because let's say you have one database, now you run it on 3 different clouds. Already you have 3 versions of this. So this is called the data sprawl. And this is a huge issue. It's not just data. This is where it shows mostly, because the data is the most precious commodity, and everybody understood this 50 years ago. That's why mainframes cost so much back then. But now we duplicate the data up the wazoo, and we store them in, the same data is perhaps kind of copied 20 times at the minimum. And when you do this thing, the governance of it, the maintenance of it, the freshness of it, everything becomes a factor. So at the end, it's also a cost because you're keeping so many copies of this and stuff like this. These technologies have to now come, which is the next sort of version or next evolution of cloud-based. So far, what people have done is taken the legacy infrastructure and cut and paste, as we call, put it on the cloud, so to say. That doesn't cut it at a certain level because cloud is all about elastic computing. So you just have to build it differently. So it gives you the ability to sort of elastically expand and contract based on your business needs. And the older infrastructure doesn't. And now we are sort of using, chewing gum and baling wire, so to say, to sort of pull all these things together to come to a solution. The next evolution will be these modern technologies which have thought through these problems and solved them. So that way you don't have to now have multiple technologies managing multiple copies of the data. Instead, you can sort of have one version of the data, a single source of truth, if you will. And that should help on multiple levels. First thing you mentioned, development skills. Now you have to learn 15 different technologies. It's not one thing. And everyone who comes up with a new software says, my way is better than the previous one. And so it's like saying that every car comes with a new way of driving. That never takes on. So somehow in software, we seem to make those sort of mistakes. So that has to be number one, skills. You cannot have so much proliferation of skills because everybody's coming with new technology. That's got to be thought through differently and solved. Then there is cost because of this proliferation. You're running so many different software and now you have to keep so many different formats of the same data, etc. And a third is complexity that comes out of all of this, which is going to get to a point where enterprises just cannot manage. So the modern set of software that is being built, even cloud is old news, actually. We are all talking as though cloud is new. It's been around for more than 20 years now. So cloud 2.0 has to happen at a certain level. And these modern technologies on top of it is what is required to sort of, take us to the true goals that digital transformation truly wants to achieve.
Ravi, if you don't mind me interjecting a question from the audience here, it's very relevant to what you said about skill set. Someone's asking what skill sets are most desirable as you look at prospective new hires and as the industry continues to evolve?
Yeah, I think it depends. There are so many domains that you have to talk about because cloud collapses. Cloud is like a catch-all, if you will. There are multiple sort of strata in a software development stack, all the way from sort of your databases. There are newer set of databases that are there. You need to familiarize with, like, distributed databases, how they operate and their principles. Above that are the modern sort of architectures of Kubernetes, which is sort of becoming the platform on which you want to have your elastic deployment capabilities. And on top of that, people are modernizing the UI and the sort of application logic tiers with this whole concept of Web 3.0. Please, I'm not referring to the crypto side of it, but the general way of distributed. So everything is going from like central to distributed. So as a common theme, if you understand how distributed sort of systems or distributed application infrastructure work, that's as a principle, but each tier, UI tier, has its own set of tools and innovations. The middleware application logic tier has its own new innovations. The data tier has its own innovations. And on top of all of this, we have mobile, which is also the next bastion, because more and more stuff, when they get distributed, it's about moving data closer and closer to the edge where people are actually interacting and where the power is exponentially. I mean, the kinds of compute power we are carrying in our phones, back in the day, you would actually have to go to a data center and you would have ACs sort of cooling those boxes. Now you carry them in your person with your body temperature. So the compute capacity is increasing. And so more and more edge computing and sort of occasionally connected devices, those sort of experiences. And last but not the least, the much abused AI and ML. With all this data, and more machines are generating the data, not humans anymore. So in this world, how do you make sense of the data? That becomes a bigger issue than just capturing the data and storing in some place. How do you find your insights? How do you find the noise from the separate signal from the noise? So for all of this AI, and that requires deep math. So to understand, it's basically mathematics at a certain level. So those skills of understanding how deep learning, reinforcement learning, all these principles work, and how it is applied in the application domain, not knowing them just horizontally. How does it work for your industry or your line of business? That's where the applications are getting modernized, and those sort of skills. So I gave a pretty broad answer because it's a very broad topic, and there are more specific ones we can get into it. And in the middle of all of it, understanding how each of the cloud infrastructure works is a very it's a required and necessary skill, but not sufficient. You need to know a lot more than that. So understanding the cloud architectures and where they are is also another component in the middle of this.
All right, Ravi, we appreciate that. And Sanjeev, thank you for talking about the future as well. And David, as we're on the conversation of cloud playing in a company's future, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And then we'll switch gears to operational management.
Yeah, I think as far as the future, I think Ravi made a good point. The cloud's been around for a significant amount of time. I think it's how we leverage the cloud technologies now in the new modern ways beyond where we were before is going to be the key to the future around the enterprise. Example that a partner of mine used that I like to repeat. If you think of the old way in which you would navigate between point A and point B, you'd get a hard copy of a map. And then there was this great innovation that was MapQuest, which you'd allow to customize the map by saying you were going to start and you were going to end, and then you'd print out the instructions and you travel the same way. Now, I don't know anybody, not even navigation in your car. I think that the vast majority of us using phones that are digitally connected, that are not just taking us to point A, point B, but providing us greater insights as we make that trip from traffic to opportunities for commerce and so forth. And the concept of a trip now and how you navigate, it looks vastly different than it was before. I've been using this as an example to the business leaders when we talk to them about their business. This cannot be cloud when they talk about how we inject it into use in the company. It's not simply be able to find a more efficient way of doing what you did before. It's about taking your business and doing things that weren't available to you before, that you didn't even imagine before, and be able to connect through other parties, other partnerships, integrating your supply chain through to your clients. It's just some unique opportunities that we can focus in on now that weren't available. So, when we talk about cloud, we still talk about, CapEx to OpEx and such. This should all be about innovation, and it needs to be something that's pushed throughout the entire company.
Right. And Sanjeev, you had mentioned before that the term cloud is overloaded and FinOps is going to be key to this. So I want to unpack your answer a bit more. What do you think the next 10 years of digital transformation looks like for the industry, for the job market? Tell us more about your operational management concerns.
Yeah, so I think FinOps is going to be a big topic. It already is a very big topic. What I see personally is that when cloud became the thing, and when I say the cloud is such an overloaded term, and as Ravi said, there's so many different definitions. There's IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, private cloud, public cloud. So cloud by itself is a very wide term. So there was this massive rush where people were getting into the cloud and thinking that we need to be in the cloud. Let's just move into the cloud. Now what I'm starting to see is that from an operational point of view, organizations are looking at different types of clouds at a workload by workload level. So they're looking at, they're saying, it just came up on this call, one of the biggest advantages of cloud is the elastic scalability. What if I'm running a workload that doesn't take advantage of that elasticity? It's always running. So is that the right thing for me to run in the cloud, or can I run it more cost effectively on premises using some of the cloud primitives? So we are still utilizing modern technologies, but there's an emphasis on cost. The other emphasis from operational point of view is on compliance. What data residency compliance regulations do I need to maintain, which also determines where I'm going to deploy my data. So over the next 10 years, I'm starting to see that data compliance regulations are becoming pervasive. In this country, in the United States, we'll have 50 of them. Every state is going to have one. And unless the federal government decides that we need to have an EU GDPR like common layer. So data residency, cost issues, latency issues are going to determine how the data is distributed. We are going to see more of 5G, autonomous cars, IoT, some of the things that Ravi has already mentioned. So there's going to be more emphasis on streaming data. There's going to be more emphasis on unstructured data. So we are going to move away from our focus on let's catalog, let's understand, let's store everything into structured data and analyze it in batch. So we're going to see a shift into let's store all kinds of data, analyze all kinds of data, and whether it's batch or streaming, we will be ready to handle that. So I think for the next 10 years, the amount of spending is going to keep going up. Right now, we expect the cloud spending is between 5 to 15%. I know Couchbase numbers are higher, so we see all kinds. But whatever that number is of IT spend in the cloud, it is only the beginning of our journey. So the majority of cloud spending is yet to come.
Certainly interesting opportunities there. Let's apply everything we've been discussing. How can companies become future-proof in their transformation? What should leaders prioritize in 2022 and beyond? Ravi, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so a very good question. How do you future-proof? The best way to sort of predict the future is to invent it, as someone said. So in one sense, you just have to understand your own sort of future, where you want to be, and you have to skate to that, where the puck is going to be, as opposed to where the puck is now. But there are a few sort of givens in this future that we're all going to be living in. The first is that we are going to be doing serious commerce in a very disconnected sort of manner. Untethered is the word that you use. No longer are people going to sit in front of conventional, okay, I want to do something, let me sit in front of the computer. Computing will become ubiquitous. You'll be watching a show and buying some product from there, or it could be in a game, or it could be just driving and you touch your screen in your car, and magic can happen. So this is the untethered way of living that we will sort of move to next. So that, and how are all these powered at the end of the day is the bottom line is sort of data that needs to be there at the point of your engagement, as opposed to you currently sort of sitting and sort of leaning in. It should just come to you at a certain level. That's where things will sort of move to, which means you're going to have a lot more edge capabilities you need to have. So you need to think through that all the way in your enterprise, in your user interaction, everywhere you're building new systems. These have to be now, as opposed to centrally data sitting in a central system in some data center in Virginia, and people coming from all over the globe to that one single box to be served, that goes away. Now the data has to get completely distributed and be available closest to where people are engaging, which means all the way to their devices that you're carrying. So the application is always on and working, and then whether network availability is there or not. And these are what we call as occasional systems. This is what IoT and the edge and the 5Gs and stuff like that will enable. So that's one reality you have to face, and that's the consumption sort of side of the equation. The second is the sort of the insights and intelligence. With so much data coming in, just imagine, you take a picture. Nowadays, you don't take one picture, you take 10 of them, because you can. Now, to make sense of which is the one that you want to keep, you actually now need AI to help you with that, because you would forget it. And then you are uploading it onto your laptop, onto your cloud. So many copies of this at one day, when you want to just find that one picture that you want to use for something, it's not easy anymore. Similarly, the data is actually coming at us at speeds which we just cannot tackle with, and that can be tackled only with AI. You need more assistance. You need machines doing the job as opposed to humans doing it now. Just as an example, cars, from manual to automatic to autonomous is where they have come, which means that earlier the humans had to do all the work to a point where now many cars have automatic transmissions and they can do cruise control and stuff like that, to a point where your Tesla now just punch in an address, it'll take you where you need to go. So the car is the fundamental shift here is that the now car is doing the driving, humans are just supervising it. The same thing has to happen for the rest of the systems that we are sort of building now, where you cannot expect sort of human interaction at that heavy scale that we are used to. Instead, you have to build the systems where machines manage them mostly, and humans are there to sort of supervise, guide, and sort of ensure the governance piece of it that we talked about. So the last piece of it is security and trust in the digital world. Those have to be solved deeply, because currently there's a laissez-faire that's over there in terms of the amount of information that's there publicly, and enterprises owning a lot of your private data and sort of using and misusing it is a huge debate that's going on over there. So people getting control of their personal data and having that privacy and governance. And like Sanjeev said, every state every possible entity is going to come out with its own 4-letter acronym for the compliance bit. So companies and enterprises have to think through that and offer sort of governance of data in a transparent manner. So there's a lot of work to be done there. So these are the sort of 3 pillars, if you ask me. And finally, at the end of all of this, there's always cost. Whoever is going to offer them at the cheapest is going to be at a certain level the winner, because it's about democratization of all of this stuff, as opposed to only the privileged few having access and control of it, which is the case right now. So those are the sort of 3 major vectors of innovation. 4th is always there in the middle of all of this, which is cost, and that's where I expect companies to be skating to, and that's where they need to future-proof, because these changes that we are seeing are sort of here to stay and accelerate further.
All right, and Ravi, a couple more questions in the last few minutes that we have here. To quickly build on your answer, how do we keep leaders from using the term digital transformation from becoming a buzzword or greenwashing within the organization?
Very true. It's a very good point. Even I hesitate to use the phrase digital transformation because it's so abused, so to say. I think what has to happen is the full realization that there is a new world order at a certain level, and you have to adapt to that. And that is what the sort of the buzzword for it, or the templatized word for it, is a digital transformation. But it means something very specific to your organization goals. That's what leaders need to translate that to make it more actionable, as opposed to sort of, everybody's doing digital transformation. We got to have some of that. That's not how this is going to sort of play out. People have to be more specific, as in to say that, look, in our business, this is what it means. As an example, curbside pickup. Every retailer has to offer that, otherwise it's not going to fly in the future, which means all the way from your inventory control system to your stocking to your the physical store infrastructure can change if you just play this thing right, so that the goods show up where you go at your curb, as opposed to you having to walk 50 aisles and picking things up, right? So this is how a retailer, e-tailer, merge happens, and that changes there. Or it could be a field service enablement in your organization, where you say that currently our field services people, let's take down power lines or telephone lines and stuff like that. You actually have to send out a crew which does a reconnaissance of an impacted area, and they figure out what is, and then they have to come back because certain of their systems are not connected and stuff like that. Now people just carry tablets in their hands, and they can get the inventory of stuff that they actually used and what they had to do, and crews can go more prepared. So field modernization, many enterprises take that. So each or a good old how do you say a set-top box sort of a provider of a cable company, imagine, has to say that now I just really want to stream everything, so that you don't have to go get my set-top box and sit in front of the TV. You can watch it from wherever, from your mobile phone, from your laptop, or from the big screen TV with the app embedded inside it. So that's a transformation of going to where people are, as opposed to making people come to where you are. So each organization has its own imperative that they need to solve. So this is why it becomes like the C-suite engagement that we talked about. They understand what is the business model shift that's actually happening, and what technology shift needs to happen to enable that or leapfrog that competition. So you have to internalize and make it a mission. The vision could be digital transformation, but the mission is very specific to your organization and the goals you want to achieve. And then you need to sort of, walk around your water coolers and tell the stories so people imbibe it. Otherwise, it's just a buzzword and say, yeah, sure. Those four guys are talking about digital transformation. If you're people who really have to affect and build it or not believing it, then I think that's the divide truly that you have to actually cross. At the end of the day, to quote E.O. Wilson, is like, we have godlike technologies and Paleolithic institutions, but very primeval human emotions. So
Right.
At the end of the day, we are always, it's about people. If you get the people's imagination going and you motivate them the right way, the rest of the tools are available for people figure it out. So I think that's where the organizational shifts need to happen, so that we show people the possibilities of the future. So they build you the kind of ships that will take you there.
Right. Well, it's a great way to wrap all of that up. You're very clear about the way organizational leaders should guide their companies through it throughout the entire presentation. So Ravi, we have just about a minute to go here before, I hear that Couchbase is a roadshow coming up in June that will focus on legacy modernization. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of innovation that's happening there in the entire application stack. So generally, we'll be talking about what we see, because many of the companies we work with are sort of the leaders in their spaces, and they are the ones who have the access and the knowledge to sort of be in the forefront of technology. So this would be about seeing how they're modernizing to be the digital leaders. These were many enterprises who were leaders before these, these mega shifts have happened, and they've adapted and they have thrived and they have increased their lead. And so what are the technologies that are the underpinnings of this that actually make this happen, all the way from your interaction patterns? What is the change that's happening? What's the change that's happening in the infrastructure that is behind it? All the way from the newer buzzwords that are over there, and how to make sense of that. And finally, of course, a topic very dear to us, which is all the way down to the data tier. What is the innovation that is happening there? We talked about elasticity and computing, how you should look at the cloud computing differently, the consumption-based model. And so this will be a talk about how the modernization actually happens in a manner that you can still keep your existing business, existing infrastructure humming, yet you're sort of remodeling at the same time your whole infrastructure. How people straddle this and come to the other end successful. People have tried this and failed in the past, but yet they're succeeding now because a core set of technologies have emerged which make this thing happen. And so that's what we'll be talking about, and sort of sharing our experiences with all our sort of customers and users who are interested in this topic. I would welcome more people to come join us. The more the merrier.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you, David, Ravi, and Sanjeev, for this lively and informative discussion. We appreciate your time and expertise. And to everyone who attended today's event, on behalf of NASDAQ and Couchbase, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thanks, David, Sanjeev. Bye-bye.